divide between Torah and academia isn't just about lofty concepts, theology and morality. The humanism, curiosity, and commitment to truth of academia fall flat even in some of the most mundane and practical issues when it's convenient. Let's explore the calendar. Interestingly, the Hebrew calendar is a peak of humanism. It's regulated by the Beit Din, a human court given by God the power to determine when divine holidays will fall out. It's systematic, dependent on empirical observation of the sun and the moon, and based on extensive legal examination of the witnesses. And what of the Gregorian calendar? The calendar that's become the lingua franca of calendars accepted across the world for communication about dates. Let's just say that neither originality nor academic integrity were at the top of Pope Gregory's priority list. His calendar was only a slight modification of the Julian calendar, which had been the dominant calendar across Europe for the previous 1500 years, itself adapted from the Roman Republican calendar, which was likely borrowed from the Greeks, who took their calendar from the Babylonians, and surprise, surprise, the Babylonian calendar and the Hebrew calendar are very closely related. But let's go back to the beginning. Romulus and Remus, the mythical founders of Rome, supposedly created the Roman calendar. Calendar originally including 10 months, totaling 304 days, beginning in March, or in short, a total mess of a calendar. This calendar was such a mess that, according to Roman legend, Romulus's successor, the second king of Rome, Numa Pompilius, fixed it by adding 2 months, January and February. Though he placed January at the beginning of the calendar and February at the end, and only later kings would adjust it to make it the calendar that we know today. It was likely an attempt by Pompilius to emulate the Greeks, especially in light of the fact that Roman historians mention that Pompilius was a student of the great Greek philosopher Pythagoras. The Greek calendar, like the Babylonian one before it, was a lunisolar calendar, including 12 lunar months with intercalated leap days, 3 of every 8 years in the Greek calendar and 7 of every 19 in the Babylonian calendar, in order to balance the lunar calendar with a solar cycle. Unfortunately for the Romans, like every good knockoff, as Pompilius's adaptation of the Babylonian and Greek calendars grew further from the source, it included more and more distortions. This includes the addition of January and February, which distorted the names of numbered months like September, which became the 9th and not the 7th month, and December being the 12th and not the 10th month. Additionally, while Pompilius tried to include intercalation like the Babylonians and the Greeks, he left that calculation up to the kings of Rome. It was subordinate to political concerns, and therefore, in later generations, Roman politicians attempting to outmaneuver their enemies by shortening their terms would add or subtract months from the calendar, leaving the calendar a complete mess. Ultimately, Julius Caesar, attempting to fix the calendar, abandoned the lunar calendar entirely in favor of the Egyptian civil calendar, almost identical to today's secular calendar. Aside from minor differences like 2 February 23rds instead of February 29th in leap years, and the months Quintilis and Sextilis, which would only later be replaced by July and August in honor of Julius and Augustus Caesar, the calendar remained unchanged from the Julian renovation for another 1500 years. So, what exactly was Pope Gregory's big idea in creating the Gregorian calendar? Essentially, it was an attempt by the 16th century leader of the Catholic Church to fix the date of Easter, that had shifted later into the year over the millennium and a half due to inaccuracies in the Julian calendar. This being despite the fact that Easter's observance was based on a combination of lunar and solar calculations with no consideration for the actual calendar date. There is no date of Easter. This led Protestant Europe to resist the change for over 100 years, and the Eastern Orthodox Church to hold out until the early 20th century with the Communist Revolution and Greek independence before adopting Gregory's calendar. So why have academics across the centuries so fully accepted this nonsensical calendar? By abandoning the lunar calendar, Julius Caesar made months irrelevant. They're no longer based on natural phenomena and observations. They're just random chunks of 30 or 31 or sometimes 28 or 29 days. Standardized month names, half of them are for Greco-Roman deities, 2 for dictators of the Roman Empire, and the remainder are misnumbered Latin. The new year is irrelevant. Even for Christians, it's not attached to a specific religious date. And there's definitely no natural phenomenon that occurs on January 1st. And ultimately, Gregory's convoluted solution for intercalation aimed to make the year slightly more accurate than the Julian calendar, still imperfect by 26 seconds a year. Is this the peak of humanism and reason? Or has academia chosen convenience over its highest values, all the while rejecting Hebrew tradition, prophecy, revelation, including the Hebrew calendar, as backwards religious nonsense?